In a world where celebrities often stick to scripted interviews and carefully manage public appearances, one unexpected moment changed everything. A TV host's misguided attempt at humor transformed into a powerful lesson about respect, compassion, and standing up for what's right. If you're watching this, comment where you're joining us from today as we dive into the story of how Emma Stone turned an uncomfortable situation into a masterclass in human dignity. The studio lights gleamed off the polished floor of one of Hollywood's most prestigious talk shows. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation as audience members settled into their seats, eager to see one of the industry's most beloved actresses. Emma Stone had arrived to promote her latest film, but nobody could have predicted how this interview would become about something far more important than movie publicity. The show's host, known for his sharp wit and occasionally controversial remarks, had built his career on pushing boundaries and generating viral moments. His designer, suit and perfectly coiffed hair, exuded the confidence of someone who believed they could say anything and get away with it. The live audience, a mix of devoted fans and curious onlookers, watched as Emma Stone gracefully took her seat, her genuine smile and down-to-earth demeanor immediately warming the room. As the interview began, everything seemed normal. They discussed her new project, shared a few laughs about Hollywood mishaps, and the conversation flowed naturally. But then came the moment that would change the entire trajectory of the show. During the audience interaction segment, a young fan with autism stood up to ask Emma a question about her character's development in the film. The host's demeanor shifted subtly as the fan took longer than usual to formulate their question, their words coming out with careful determination. Instead of showing patience, the host's face twisted into what he thought was a comedic expression, mimicking the fan's speech pattern. A few nervous laughs rippled through the audience, but most people sat in uncomfortable silence. Emma Stone's posture changed instantly. Her eyes, usually warm and inviting, took on a steely determination. She had spent years working with autism advocacy groups and had developed a deep understanding and respect for the autism community. The host, mistaking her silence for approval, continued his inappropriate gesture. "Let's move things along," he said, cutting off the fan mid-question. "We've got a show to run, and some of us can actually speak at a normal pace." His words hung in the air like a toxic cloud, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. What happened next would become one of the most shared moments in talk show history. Emma Stone, without raising her voice or losing her composure, turned to face the host directly. The studio lights caught the subtle tremor in her hands, not from fear, but from controlled anger. "You know," she began, her voice clear and steady, "I've sat on many talk show couches, but this is the first time I've felt genuinely disappointed in a host." The audience fell completely silent. Even the cameramen seemed to hold their breath. That young person, showing the courage to stand up and ask a question in front of hundreds of people, deserves our respect, not our mockery. The host's smile began to falter as he realized his attempt at humor had backfired spectacularly. He tried to interject with a joke, but Emma wasn't finished. She stood up, walked over to the audience member, and asked them to complete their question, demonstrating the kind of genuine interest and respect that should have been shown from the beginning. "Take all the time you need," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Your question about character development shows more insight into filmmaking than many professional critics I've encountered." The fan's face lit up with appreciation, and the audience burst into supportive applause. The host, now visibly uncomfortable, attempted to regain control of the situation. "Come on, we're just having a bit of fun here," he said, his voice lacking its usual confidence. "No need to turn this into a serious moment." Emma turned back to him, her expression a perfect blend of grace and determination. "Actually, this is exactly the kind of moment that needs to be taken seriously. Every day, people with autism face This kind of casual discrimination, this thoughtless mockery that some people try to pass off as humor, it's not funny, it's harmful, and it needs to stop. The host's face had turned a shade of red that his makeup couldn't conceal. The teleprompters continued to scroll with the planned questions, but everyone knew the original script had been abandoned. This had become something much more significant. Emma continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. You know what's remarkable about the autism community? Their honesty, their unique perspective on the world, their ability to see things that many of us miss. When someone takes the time to express themselves, especially in a public setting like this, they're showing incredible bravery. They're not here for your entertainment or your mockery. The audience began to murmur in agreement, and several people stood up to applaud. The host, realizing the gravity of his mistake, attempted to backtrack. I apologize if anyone was offended, he said, using the classic non-apology that celebrities and politicians often hide behind. Emma wasn't having it. It's not about being offended, she corrected him. It's about understanding that your platform comes with responsibility. Every joke, every gesture, every moment of mockery reinforces harmful stereotypes that the autism community has been fighting against for years. The young fans, still standing, had tears in their eyes, not from embarrassment, but from gratitude. Emma had transformed what could have been a humiliating moment into a powerful statement about dignity and respect. The host, now thoroughly chastened, looked directly at the fan and offered a genuine apology. I was wrong, he said, his voice stripped of its usual bravado. I apologize to you and to everyone I may have hurt with my thoughtless behavior. Emma nodded in acknowledgement of his apology, but wasn't quite finished with her lesson. You know what makes great television? She asked rhetorically. Authentic moments, real connections. Not cheap shots at people who deserve our admiration for their courage and honesty. The production team, sensing the power of this unscripted moment, kept the cameras rolling. This wasn't just another celebrity interview. It was becoming a viral moment of accountability and awareness. As the tension in the room began to dissipate, Emma returned to her seat on the couch, but not before ensuring that the fans' question was fully answered. She spent several minutes discussing the character development they had asked about, treating their analysis with the seriousness it deserved. The host, his usual smugness replaced by genuine reflection, watched as Emma demonstrated how to handle an interview with grace, respect, and authenticity. The remainder of the segment took on a different tone, more thoughtful, more inclusive, and infinitely more meaningful than the standard celebrity promotional appearance. By the time the show wrapped, something had shifted in the studio. The audience had witnessed more than just a confrontation. They had seen a masterclass in standing up for what's right while maintaining dignity and composure. As Emma prepared to leave the studio, numerous audience members approached her to express their gratitude. Parents of children with autism, educators, and advocates thanked her for using her platform to address such an important issue. The story didn't end there. Within hours, clips of the interview began circulating on social media. The host's initial mockery and Emma's powerful response became a trending topic, sparking important conversations about respect, disability rights, and the responsibility that comes with public platforms. This moment would be remembered not just as a celebrity standing up to a thoughtless joke, but as a turning point in how mainstream media approaches neurodiversity. It became a reference point for other hosts and comedians, a reminder that true humor doesn't come at the expense of others' dignity, and for the young fan who stood up to ask their question, they became an inspiration for others in the autism community, proof that one person's courage to speak up can catalyze meaningful change. The studio segment had ended, but the real story was just beginning to unfold. As Emma Stone left the building, Her phone was already buzzing with messages of support from fellow actors, autism advocacy groups, and thousands of social media users who had witnessed the moment live or through rapidly spreading clips online. The show's production team huddled in their office, watching as their social media metrics exploded. This wasn't the kind of viral moment they had hoped for. Instead of entertaining memes or playful celebrity banter, they were facing a serious conversation about responsibility in media. The host, now alone in his dressing room, sat staring at his phone as notifications poured in, each one a reminder of his momentary lapse in judgment. Within hours, major news outlets picked up the story. Headlines appeared across the internet. Emma Stone stands up for autism community in powerful TV moment. Hollywood star turns interview into lesson on respect. Hosts mock of autistic fan backfires as Emma Stone takes stand. But what made this story different from typical celebrity controversies was its lasting impact. The clip continued to circulate, not just as a gotcha moment, but as an educational tool. Teachers began showing it in classrooms to discuss bullying and respect. Corporate training programs incorporated it into their sensitivity workshops. The ripple effect was expanding far beyond the entertainment industry. The host's initial response had been defensive, but as the day progressed and he watched the footage again, something changed. He saw himself through different eyes, not as the clever comedian he thought he was, but as someone who had used his platform to punch down. The realization hit him hard. Meanwhile, autism advocacy organizations began reaching out to Emma Stone's team. They had been fighting for years to change public perception and combat harmful stereotypes. In just a few minutes of unscripted television, Emma had accomplished what countless PSAs and awareness campaigns had struggled to achieve. She had made people understand the human impact of thoughtless mockery. The young fan who had asked. The question became an unexpected symbol of courage. Their social media accounts were flooded with messages from other people with autism who had been afraid to speak up in public settings. Each message shared a similar theme. Seeing someone stand up for them on such a public platform gave them hope. Back at the network, executives were dealing with the fallout. The host's behavior had violated their stated commitment to diversity and inclusion. They needed to respond, but more importantly, they needed to change. Emergency meetings were called, sensitivity training was scheduled, and consultations with autism experts were arranged. Emma Stone's own social media accounts were overwhelmed with support, but she maintained her typical grace under pressure. Instead of taking a victory lap or using the moment for self-promotion, she redirected attention to autism advocacy organizations and amplified voices from the autism community. The following day, the host did something unprecedented in his career. He opened his show with a lengthy, unscripted apology. No jokes, no attempts at light-hearted banter, just honest reflection on his behavior and its potential impact. Yesterday, I failed not just as a host, but as a human being, he began, his usual swagger replaced by genuine humility. I made the mistake of thinking that someone's difference was an appropriate target for humor. I was wrong, and I'm deeply sorry. He continued, speaking directly to the camera. To the brave individual who stood up to ask their question, and to everyone in the autism community who has ever faced mockery or discrimination, I apologize. But I know that words aren't enough. Actions matter more than apologies. The host then announced that his show would be partnering with autism advocacy groups to produce a series of segments highlighting the achievements and challenges of people with autism. It wasn't damage control. It was a genuine attempt to turn a moment of shame into an opportunity for growth and understanding. Emma Stone's own response to the host's apology demonstrated the grace that had made her so beloved in Hollywood. She posted a simple message on social media: growth comes from acknowledging our mistakes and choosing to do better. Thank you for taking this important step. The real work begins now. The incident sparked a broader conversation in the entertainment industry. Other talk show hosts and comedians began examining their own material, questioning whether they had ever crossed similar lines in the pursuit of laughs. Writers' rooms started having serious discussions about the difference between punching up and punching down in comedy. But perhaps the most significant impact was felt in schools and workplaces across the country. The viral clip became a starting point for discussions about inclusivity and respect. Teachers reported that students were more likely to intervene when they witnessed bullying or mockery. Human resource departments used it as an example in their training materials. The young fan who had sparked this chain of events received an invitation to speak at their school's assembly about their experience. Standing at the podium, they shared how Emma Stone's intervention had changed their perspective on self-advocacy. "For years, I thought I had to accept being the butt of jokes," they said. "But seeing someone like Emma Stone stand up for our community showed me that we deserve respect, and it's okay to demand it." The autism community itself was experiencing a surge of support and understanding. Organizations reported increased donations and volunteering offers. More importantly, they noticed a shift in public discourse. People were becoming more mindful of their language and assumptions about autism. Even other celebrities began sharing their own connections to the autism community. Actors, musicians, and athletes came forward with stories about their family members, friends, or their own experiences with autism. What had started as a tense moment on a talk show was evolving into a movement for greater understanding and acceptance. The host's journey of redemption continued. He invited autism experts onto his show, not for quick sound bites or superficial discussions, but for meaningful conversations about understanding and inclusion. His audience noticed the change. The show became less about scoring quick laughs and more about creating connections and understanding. Emma Stone's management team was flooded with requests for interviews about the incident, but she declined most of them. Instead, she focused on working directly with autism advocacy groups, learning more about their needs and how she could use her platform to support their cause effectively. The network executives, who had initially feared the negative publicity, began to see the incident as a turning point. They implemented new guidelines for their shows, requiring sensitivity training for hosts and writers. More importantly, they started actively seeking input from disability advocates when developing new content. As weeks passed, the incident remained a topic of discussion, but the conversation evolved. It wasn't just about one host's mistake or one actress's intervention. It had become a catalyst for examining how society treats people who are different. Social media platforms saw a decrease in mocking memes and an increase in supportive content about autism. Parents reported that their children with autism were facing less bullying at school. Workplace environments became more accommodating of neurodiversity. The impact continued to ripple outward, touching lives in unexpected ways. A group of film students created a documentary about the incident and its aftermath, interviewing people from the autism community about their experiences with public mockery and the importance of allies speaking up. 3 months after the incident, Emma Stone was presented with an award from an autism advocacy organization. In her acceptance speech, she shifted the focus away from herself. The real heroes are the people who face discrimination and mockery every day, yet continue to show up, speak up, and share their unique perspectives with the world. They're the ones who deserve recognition. The host, who had initially feared the incident would end his career, found that his honest admission of wrongdoing and commitment to change had actually increased his credibility. His show's ratings remained strong, but the tone had shifted. It was now known as a place where meaningful conversations could happen alongside entertainment. But the story wasn't over yet. The incident had set in motion changes that would continue to reshape the entertainment industry's approach to neurodiversity, leading to even more significant developments in the months to come. 6 months after the incident, its influence had grown far beyond the entertainment industry. Major corporations began reaching out to autism advocacy groups, not just for basic sensitivity training, but for comprehensive programs to make their workplaces more inclusive. The ripple effect had turned into a wave of genuine organizational change. One particularly significant development came from a major tech company that had watched the viral moment. They announced a new initiative specifically designed to recruit and support employees with autism, recognizing that different ways of thinking could lead to innovation. Their CEO publicly credited Emma Stone's stand as the catalyst that made them re-evaluate their hiring practices. The host, continuing his journey of redemption, had transformed his show into a platform for meaningful dialogue. His ratings, which many had predicted would plummet, actually increased as audiences responded to the more thoughtful content. He began featuring regular segments, highlighting the achievements of people with autism in various fields: science, art, technology, and beyond. Educational institutions across the country started incorporating the incident into their curriculum, not just as a lesson about bullying, but as a case study in effective advocacy and social change. University psychology departments used it to discuss the impact of public perception on mental health and self-esteem in the autism community. Emma Stone's influence continued to grow, but in an unexpected way. Rather than positioning herself as an autism expert, she used her platform to amplify authentic voices from the community. She began producing a documentary series that let people with autism tell their own stories, completely unfiltered and in their own words. The young fan who had asked the question that started it all had become an inspiration in their own right. They started a YouTube channel discussing movies from their unique perspective, gaining a following that appreciated their detailed analysis and honest viewpoint. Film studios began reaching out to them for feedback on how their movies portrayed neurodiversity, but perhaps the most profound change was happening in everyday interactions. Parents reported that their children were more likely to stand up against bullying. Workplaces became more accommodating of different communication styles. People began to understand that diversity isn't just about race or gender. It's about embracing all the different ways of being human. The entertainment industry underwent a noticeable transformation. Casting directors actively sought actors with autism for roles, not just for characters with autism, but for any role they could skillfully portray. Writers' rooms began consulting with autism advocates to ensure authentic representation in their stories. Social media platforms, often criticized for enabling mockery and bullying, saw a shift in user behavior. Hashtags promoting autism acceptance and understanding regularly trended. More importantly, users began self-policing their communities, calling out discriminatory jokes and promoting respectful dialogue. The host's show became a case study in how media could evolve. He dedicated episodes to exploring different aspects of autism, from sensory processing differences to communication styles. But more than that, he demonstrated how someone could acknowledge their mistakes and work to become a better ally. Emma Stone's impact extended into the fashion industry when she collaborated with designers to create sensory-friendly clothing lines. The initiative started after she learned about the challenges many people with autism face with traditional clothing textures and tags. The collection proved popular, not just with the autism community, but with anyone who appreciated comfortable, thoughtful design. Research institutions noticed an uptick in funding for autism studies, not focused on finding a cure, but on understanding and supporting the unique ways that people with autism experience and interact with the world. The narrative was shifting from one of deficit to one of difference and potential. Corporate training programs evolved beyond basic sensitivity training. Companies began implementing comprehensive neurodiversity programs, creating environments where different thinking styles were not just accommodated, but valued. The business world started to recognize that diversity of thought could drive innovation and problem solving. The original clip continued to circulate, but now it was accompanied by countless stories of positive change. People shared their own experiences of standing up against discrimination, inspired by Emma Stone's example of using privilege and platform to support others. Legal firms reported an increase in advocacy for autism rights, with more cases being brought forward challenging discriminatory practices. The incident had given many people the courage to speak up about their experiences and demand equal treatment under the law. Schools began revising their policies, moving away from a one-size-fits-all approach to education and embracing methods that could accommodate different learning styles. The focus shifted from forcing students to conform to helping them thrive in ways that worked for them. The host's journey became a template for other public figures who had made similar mistakes. Rather than offering quick apologies and moving on, they saw how genuine reflection and commitment to change could lead to personal growth and positive impact. Emma Stone's approach to advocacy became a model for other celebrities. Instead of speaking for marginalized communities, she demonstrated how to use privilege to create platforms where people could speak for themselves. Other stars began following her example, leading to a more authentic representation of diverse voices in media. The autism community itself experienced a surge in confidence and visibility. More people felt comfortable disclosing their autism in professional settings, knowing that understanding and acceptance were growing. Support groups reported increased attendance and more positive discussions about identity and self-advocacy. Politicians began paying attention too. Several state legislatures introduced bills to better protect the rights of people with autism in educational and professional settings. The incident had helped create political will for concrete policy changes. The fashion industry's response to Emma Stone's sensory-friendly clothing line sparked a broader conversation about accessible design. Other companies began considering how their products could better serve diverse needs, leading to innovations that benefited everyone. Media coverage of autism shifted noticeably. Instead of focusing on challenges and limitations, stories began highlighting achievements and contributions. Journalists sought out authentic voices from the autism community, rather than relying on external experts to tell their stories. The host's regular segments featuring people with autism had an unexpected effect on his own career. He became known as someone who could handle sensitive topics with respect and insight, leading to opportunities to address other social issues thoughtfully. But as these changes unfolded, new challenges and opportunities emerged. The momentum created by that single moment on a talk show was building towards something even bigger. 1 year after the incident, the entertainment industry gathered for a groundbreaking event, the first major awards ceremony with dedicated accommodations for neurodivergent attendees. The traditional fanfare was modified, sensory-friendly spaces were provided, lighting was adjusted, and quiet rooms were available for those who needed breaks from the stimulation. Emma Stone, who had helped consult on these changes, watched from the audience as a new era of inclusion took shape. The host, who had once mocked an autistic fan, was now receiving an award, not for comedy, but for his documentary series exploring neurodiversity in America. His acceptance speech reflected how far he'd come. A year ago, I thought I knew what made good television. Today, I understand that true entertainment doesn't come from mockery, but from celebrating our differences and learning from each other. The young fan, whose question had sparked this revolution, was now a respected film critic, their unique perspective sought after by major studios. They had turned what could have been a moment of humiliation into a platform for change, demonstrating how authentic voices could enrich cultural criticism. Emma Stone's influence had extended far beyond Hollywood. Universities were creating specialized programs in inclusive media production, ensuring that the next generation of filmmakers and producers would understand the importance of authentic representation. The curriculum included case studies of the incident, analyzing how a single moment of advocacy could catalyze social change. Corporate America had undergone its own transformation. Major companies weren't just implementing diversity policies, they were actively recruiting neurodivergent individuals, recognizing the unique skills and perspectives they brought to the workplace. The tech industry, in particular, had embraced neurodiversity as a competitive advantage. The fashion line that Emma Stone had helped launch had evolved into a movement for accessible design. Other industries followed suit, reconsidering how their products and services could better serve diverse needs. Architecture firms began incorporating sensory-friendly elements into their designs, and public spaces were being reimagined with accessibility in mind. But perhaps the most significant change was happening in everyday interactions. People were more likely to speak up when they witnessed discrimination, inspired by Emma Stone's example of using privilege responsibly. The phrase, "stand like stone," had become shorthand for advocating for others with grace and determination. The host's journey of redemption had become a case study in genuine change. He regularly invited experts and advocates to his show, not as tokens, but as valued voices in ongoing discussions about inclusion. His ratings remained strong, proving that audiences appreciated substance over sensationalism. The autism community itself had experienced a renaissance of visibility and voice. More people felt comfortable being open about their autism, knowing they would find support rather than mockery. Support groups reported that their discussions had shifted from coping with discrimination to celebrating identity and achieving goals. Emma Stone's documentary series, now in its second season, had become a platform for untold stories. Each episode featured different aspects of the autism experience, told by those who lived it. The series had won critical acclaim, but more importantly, it had changed how stories about autism were told in media. The legal landscape had evolved as well. Several states had passed comprehensive protection laws for neurodivergent individuals, inspired by the public discourse that followed the incident. These laws went beyond basic anti-discrimination measures, actively promoting inclusion in education and employment. Schools nationwide had adopted new approaches to education, recognizing that different learning styles required different teaching methods. The old model of forcing students to conform to a single standard was being replaced by flexible, inclusive approaches that celebrated neurodiversity. The entertainment industry had undergone a fundamental shift. Casting directors actively sought neurodivergent actors. Writers' rooms included autistic voices, and production sets were modified to be more accessible. The change wasn't just about representation, it was about creating authentic stories that reflected diverse experiences. Social media platforms, once breeding grounds for mockery, had become spaces for community building and advocacy. The algorithms that once amplified conflict now promoted understanding, thanks to user demand for more meaningful content. The viral clip of Emma Stone's stand continued to circulate, but now it was accompanied by thousands of stories of positive change. Research institutions reported increased interest in studying autism from a strengths-based perspective rather than focusing on deficits. Funding was flowing to projects that aimed to understand and support autistic individuals rather than trying to fix them. The scientific narrative was shifting from one of disorder to one of neurodiversity. The fashion industry's embrace of sensory-friendly design had sparked innovation across other sectors. Product designers were considering sensory needs in everything from office furniture to public transportation. Universal design principles were becoming standard practice rather than special accommodation. Political discourse around autism had evolved from awareness to acceptance and empowerment. Legislators consulted with autistic advocates when crafting policies, ensuring that laws reflected the actual needs and experiences of the community. The phrase, "nothing about us without us," had become a guiding principle. Emma Stone's approach to advocacy had become a model for celebrity engagement with social causes. Instead of speaking for marginalized communities, she demonstrated how to use privilege to amplify authentic voices. Other celebrities followed her example, leading to more meaningful representation across media. The host's regular segments on neurodiversity had inspired other shows to examine their approach to difference. Comedy evolved from mocking differences to celebrating them, proving that humor could be inclusive rather than divisive. The entertainment industry was learning that respectful content could also be engaging and profitable. As the year drew to a close, Emma Stone received countless offers to tell this story in a film. She declined them all, insisting that if such a film were made, it should be created and directed by someone from the autism community. Her commitment to authentic representation remained unwavering. The young fan who had asked the question that started it all was now preparing to direct their first feature film, a project about the autism experience that promised to break new ground in authentic storytelling. Emma Stone had signed on as executive producer, continuing her commitment to supporting authentic voices. The host, reflecting on his journey in his memoir, wrote, "What I thought would be the end of my career became its true beginning. I learned that real connection comes from respect, understanding, and the willingness to admit when we're wrong." As the story concluded, its impact continued to ripple outward. The moment when Emma Stone stood up against mockery had become more than a viral clip. It had become a catalyst for lasting change. The entertainment industry, corporate America, education system, and society at large had been transformed by one person's decision to stand up for what was right. The legacy of that moment lived on in countless ways, in more inclusive workplaces, in better designed products, in more authentic media representation, and most importantly, in the everyday interactions between people. It served as a reminder that change often begins with a single voice willing to speak up. Emma Stone's final public statement about the incident perfectly captured its lasting impact. Sometimes the most important moments aren't the ones we plan for, but the ones where we choose to stand up for what's right. True change happens when we see each other's humanity and act accordingly. The story had come full circle, from a moment of mockery to a movement for understanding. It proved that authentic advocacy, combined with genuine commitment to change, could transform not just individual lives, but entire societies. The ripples of that one moment continued to spread, creating waves of positive change that would influence generations to come.